Turned up at the boat at 9 o'clock, and Phil was already there working, and he says to me, man, I've been here since 6 o'clock. That's when I first really, you know, because we took a little bits of this and that, you know, in those days, but nothing on the level that Phil was doing it. And I quite admired that, you know, that he was so upfront about it, you know. He was obviously out of his head, you know, his eyes were out on stalks, you know, he'd obviously been up for God knows how many days. But it was fine, he was a hard worker, and that's what I needed. He turned up at my flat and he told me that he joined this band Motorhead. And I thought, oh, you know, because I'd read about them in the papers. Because I'd read that, I'd seen in a bit of paper that it said Motorhead, Lemmy's new band Motorhead, your lawn will die if you live next door to this, you know, this thing and all that. And it caught my eye. So when Phil told me to join that band, it was like, oh man, it's a name band. So the rehearsal for the afternoon, I went and picked them up, all their gear and that in the car. You know, I had this old Mercedes, it was only 50 quid worth, but you know, we were bombing down the road. And we got it all to this little room that was smaller than this. And we got it all in there. We're waiting for Larry. So it's about 3 in the afternoon, we're playing away, you know, just jamming. We're having a bit of fun actually. But Larry never showed, so they keep phoning Larry, say, Larry, where are you, man? You know, you're supposed to be coming down. And he never showed, so they phoned him about 6 o'clock, said, look, the rehearsal's over. He said, well, I'm still coming, I'll come. So I booked another rehearsal upstairs. It was a Saturday morning, I'm laying in bed in my flat. There's this banging on the fucking door. It's like, well, I thought the door was going to cave in. It's like 8 in the morning. Well, you know, I've only just gone to bed, so I jump up and I get to the door and there's Lemmy standing there. And he's got a leather jacket in one hand and a bullet belt in the other. And he hands them to me. Says, you got the job. And walks off. So it was fucking classic, man. So I've done there in my underpants, you know, thinking fucking great, you know. I was over the moon. We were doing the marquee. Phil wanted to leave the band, as usual. Phil said, well man, if nothing comes of the band, we might as well break up after this. So the fucking marquee was going to be our last show. Well, me and Lemmy didn't have anything else to do. I couldn't think what Phil was going to do. It was going to be our farewell gig. So I said, well look, let's get a mobile down, at least to record the fucking year and a half we've been together. And put something on the fucking tape, you know? And so we said to Lemmy, we said, listen, you know this guy Ted Carroll, don't you? And he said, yeah. I said, well, fucking phone him and ask him to send the mobile down and he can have the rights to the record. So he phoned Ted. And Ted said the problem with the marquee was they wanted 500 quid for doing a recording at the marquee. Well, you know, that was out of the question in those days. So it was all looking a bit grim. Ted came up with this idea, and we were knocking about with Speedy Keen in them days. He'd just done Johnny Thunders, and I'd known him for years, Speedy. And he was hanging around with us, having a bit of fun. And Ted Carroll said, well, why don't you go down and make a single? Plugged in and we played the set, because we were pretty good at the set. So we did the set straight off. And fuck me if it was, you know, and we'd been up all night anyway, so it didn't matter. So when we got there, we started. So we laid the whole album down, then put us in Olympic to finish off a couple of tracks because they wanted to remix Motorhead. It was a funny story, man. We've actually crashed out on the Saturday night because we're so fucking gone. Well, Speedy and John, they've stayed up all night mixing. And we've crashed out, I don't know, it must have been 1 or 2, 3 o'clock, something like that. And they're mixing Motorhead, the track Motorhead. Well, we woke up some 10 hours later, or 8 hours later, and they're still mixing it. And we go into the studio and there's a pile of boxes like that. They've done 36 mixes and they've all got stars by them. Which one's the best? Well, because they're all gone on speed, see. Everybody's out their fucking head. So they got stars by them. And let me verify, this was the funniest story in the world. And of course they couldn't remember. They said, well, this one's got 4 stars, but we think this one with the 3 stars is better. And this is in a pile like this. So that's why we had to go to Olympic and remix it. And the rest really is history. Ted put the record out and it did quite well. It got into the top 40, I think, maybe even top 30, I don't know. And we said to Phil, don't blow it, man. Don't punch the fucking producer. Don't throw a wobbler, kick your kit over and run out the door, because that's what he used to do. And the session would be gone. We got one day, you know, and Phil would blow it by fucking throwing a wobbler. I mean, I talk about me, but Phil was unfucking believable. A lot of fun as well, but this was serious. So we did the single, they brought it out. And there's this classic story of me. And they brought it out and it went into number 73, I think it got, or something. And fucking sure enough, we were on top of the pops. which for us was unbelievably funny, you know. So what a fucking fuck, you know, you've gone from here to this weird place over here, you know. But of course we weren't going to turn it down. Anything was as far as we could concerned at that time. So we did Top of the Pops, and you do it on a Wednesday. On Thursday I was doing with Jimmy O'Neill again. I was doing a bit of painting to get a few quid, you know, to eat. And I'm painting away, and it's fucking 7 o'clock, and I've said to the people we work with, I said, listen, I said, it's alright if I watch the fucking telly, I'm on in a minute. So I'm watching myself on Top of the Pops with a fucking paintbrush in one hand, you know, with the fucking overalls all covered in paint, and there I am on the telly playing Louis Louis. Then they said condescendingly, well, maybe we should do a few tracks, do an album. So Jerry gave us this really shitty deal, but it was a deal. We didn't care, we just wanted to make a record, you know. And we'd written a few more tracks by then as well, because we'd done a John Peel show, and we did 4 tracks on there. We did White Line Fever, Keep Us on the Road. I don't think we did White Line Fever, but we did I'll Be Your Sister, which was one of our next tracks that we wrote. Then I think we did Damage Case. And we had practically Overkill was written, because once we had a go, we were keen as mustard, you know what I mean? They were just flowing out. It was fantastic, all this pent up stuff. We could write songs like that. It was brilliant. Jimmy Miller was one of them names that used to come up. You know, everybody go, oh, Jimmy Miller, you know. So of course, we didn't realise quite what Jimmy had been through in his life. Because by the time we got him, he was a bit sort of used goods, you know. But it was still kind of good.
He always wore this like long cardigan, you know, with like handkerchiefs, with big boogers out, you know, like old fashioned. And he'd come in and he had like, I'm sure one time he came and he still had house slippers on and it was snowing outside, you know. And he looked as if somebody had magically lifted him up from in front of the TV and the fire at home and like transported him into the studio, you know. And he'd get there and he'd come in and he'd have his hands in his pockets and he'd sit down behind the desk and then he'd go.
He used to do things like, he'd say, I'm popping, he'd go to the fucking bathroom, he'd gone for 3 hours. I mean, you couldn't find him. I said, well, where the fuck's he gone? It wasn't until afterwards we found out he was going in the ladies' bog and fucking having a bit of thingy and passing out for fucking 2 hours. We never thought to look in the ladies. He was a lovely fella though, he was a lovely fella. And I guess we owe him a lot really, because I tell you what, Motorhead wouldn't have been an easy band to record. In fact, virtually impossible, you know. Used to have rucks with old Lem, you know. Because we got a producer and an engineer there and they'd be working away. Then Lemmy would lean over and push the bass up. I mean, Phil would go, fucking hell then, what's the point of having a fucking dog and barking yourself, you know? We're paying all this money for a producer and you're interfering. You know, it was really funny. We used to have some great rows. You know, I had a couple of good fights in the studio too. We weren't ready to do another album. I don't care what anybody says. That album was forced upon us because Jerry needed the money for his record company. So he needed us to come up with some product. Well, they pushed and pushed and pushed. Well, we started to do some demo tracks with Vic Mail, who had done the Ace of Spades and the No Sleep album. God bless Vic. And Phil had a new drum kit. So we're in the studio, we've set up his drum kit, and Phil hates the fucking drum sound that Vic Mail's got him with his new kit. So Phil, because he's a bit weird at the moment, will not work with Vic Mail again. So we've got no fucking producer. We talked to Chris Tangaridis, he wanted £10,000 up front. This other guy, John Anthony, he wanted 20 grand. And of course, that's where Doug Smith shot himself in the foot. He's only paying us £200 a week. When some cunt says he wants 10 grand to work on our album, that to us is a fucking king's ransom. You can fuck off, man. We're giving you 10 grand. You know what I mean? We didn't live in that world. Because Doug had kept us in this fucking we haven't got any money world. So this went on and on. We couldn't agree with anybody. And then one day, Phil turned to me and said, listen, Eddie, why don't you do it? And I said, man, I don't want to do it. I'm playing on the record. And he insisted, he said, no, man. He said, the Tank record's good. He says, you can do it. He said, do it with Will Reed Dick, you know, this guy. And I was I'll tell you, I swear to God, I was reluctant as fuck. It wasn't so much the album. I think it was the attitude the album was made. Was what made it not good. For me, whenever I play it, I can feel it's not quite right. But not just the songs and that. The songs would have been better had we been working as a unit, you know. But anyway, so the album, and then of course the record company crying out for this record, gotta have it, gotta have it. So we give it to them. We do this fucking album cover that we weren't happy with. Doug Smith come up with this idea. Doug wants to make a film, start a film company. So he makes a film to start the Iron Fist tour. So he's using us again to give himself a foothold in the film business. So we all wear these fucking helmets that he's had made and tromp about like cunts, you know, and look like idiots falling around and dressed in all this fucking gear with swords and shit. Anyway, joke as it was, yeah, so anyway, so that was that. And then Doug comes up with this great idea about the flying stage thing, which was a fucking nightmare.
We had this...
That gig, you can imagine, Tank go out, they're crap. Don't know what's happened to them, they're crap. We come on, we're playing songs that the kids don't even know. They haven't got the fucking album, so we're crap. We've got this stupid stage going up and fucking down, so we're crap again. It's not till the fucking encore, when we do Overkill, Bomber and Ace of Spades, that the kids come alive.
But it wasn't that drove the kids.